to the very first episode of the Squadron podcast. I'm Rhys.
I'm James.
And we are here to deliver you some quality content on Fantasy Flight's newest card game, Star Wars Unlimited.
Very excited.
Very, very excited. We started this podcast up because we are avid card game lovers.
Honestly, we just wanted more people to talk to about Star Wars Unlimited. All our friends are sick of us kind of badgering on to them, so we thought we'd take it to the internet.
Take it to the best place, where all the things are, because it would have just become two men insanely gibbering at each other otherwise.
It would have.
Now we
It's true.
insanely gibber at you. Do you want to discuss a bit about our past playing card games and what has really drawn us into the podcasting space?
Absolutely. We've been playing card games for a very long time. We both have always gone to the same kind of local gaming store, so it's always been...
Just playing on weekly events.
Yeah. I started going weekly and kind of being a part of a card gaming scene with Star Wars Destiny.
Yeah, I think that was our biggest... That was when we really first started competitively.
Mm.
I think prior to that, both of us had played Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon when we were kids. But I think when Star Wars Destiny started, I think we both went to like a local games group and we'd finished playing a bit of D&D after that, a bit of Force and Destiny, and then we went over to a table and some people were playing. We were like, "What's this?" We like, "What is?" And we found out they were rolling dice. They were playing cards. Well, I'd never seen that. I'd never seen a card game with dice.
I remember the first thing that I saw was a friend of mine who was Star Wars fanatic and just unloaded a box of dice because it just
all over the place.
bought into that first set. Absolutely. And we all just went, "What's this now?"
Let's look at all those dice. This is a dice
What
game,
can it
card game. And I think that's when I would say we both really started getting into card games. I mean, we've been all over the country since then. We've gone to different states playing. We're from Australia. The accents didn't give it away. But we played all over the country. We flew to Sydney for national events. We've gone to all of the other states.
Adelaide, Melbourne.
WA for the regional side of things. And then I think when Destiny did start slowing down there, we moved over to the Dragon Ball Super card game for quite a while there, and
yeah, that was the game that really took it to the next level.
Yeah,
of where I played Star Wars Destiny. You say competitively, but it was more on a casual side for me, purely because it was early. I didn't really have much of a job. I didn't have much money to like kind of fully invest.
Yeah.
But when Dragon Ball came out, that was kind of started at set one again.
Yeah.
And was able to kind of build up a card knowledge and an ability to play that reached that kind of national
Well, that
level.
was a turning point for both of us, where we both kind of had that disposable income of being proper adults to move into doing stuff with card games now and really making it a hobby rather than a weekly pastime. And it was great. It was really, really good. Obviously, it slowed down. I think we just got out of the game. But over the last, I would say probably year and a half, right? It's just been, we played a couple of others, One Piece, the Digimon card game came out.
I played Fab for a while.
Flesh and Blood, with really good card game. I played a bunch of Magic Commander, but I think nothing has really caught our interest until that quick start guide dropped, and I think we both went, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, I think everyone kind of heard that Fantasy Flight was doing another card game, and everyone went, "Alright, let's alright, okay."
Yeah.
But with the rules they've released and the cards they've released at the moment, I am
beyond excited.
Beyond excited. It's exciting, and it feels like it did when we were starting Dragon Ball, in that it's still relatively new. People are kind of like, but it feels like it can really bloom out like that did.
And unlike other card games, I know we've talked a lot about other card games for probably the last 5 or so minutes, but this is really exciting to us. I mean, we played a lot of card games, and this, I think for me, we're both avid Star Wars lovers.
Yeah.
We loved Star Wars Destiny. When we love card games, and this I think really puts it all together. And yeah, obviously FFG did say a while ago that they were working on something. Everyone was like, probably figure out when it comes to. But then all the cards dropped, and we've started getting spoilers and consistent things. And I have to say, it looks amazing. And you know what? Let's move into just discussing it. The core concept of Star Wars Unlimited.
One of the big things that drew me into it, and it was one of the things that you told me when you first were like, hey, this is this new card game.
Yeah.
Is how much they're creating a traditional card game.
Yes. That's, I think, one big thing that we've seen, and I think a lot of people can agree with this, in the last, I would say, decade specifically, with the whole boom of card games. There's been a lot of them.
A lot of new card games. Yeah.
Everything has a gimmick.
Yeah.
Even Destiny had dice.
Huge gimmick. Probably one of the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2 games in one. It was definitely
fun.
It was fun. It definitely was fun. But I think, and then they released Keyforge, which was a good game. It had a good gameplay loop, but it was all, it took out, in my opinion, one of the best aspects of playing a card game, and that's building a deck, making something
absolutely.
yours.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was a really big breath of fresh air to hear them say, and to read that article of them saying, we are after a traditional, enjoyable card game. Yeah. And I think that they have delivered while still giving a unique play experience.
Oh, absolutely. And when it can kind of be a bit of a turn away, saying a traditional card game is like, well, why don't I just go
play
or
something like
Magic the
that.
Gathering, essentially.
Yeah.
But they've definitely got a very cool spin on them.
It is. It's traditional in a lot of senses, but it's not. They've really. I think one thing with FFG is no matter what they do, like successful project or not, they always have a bit of that spice that they put in there, and really make it their own.
Yeah.
And I think that really does shine through with this game as well, and that's why I'm so excited for it. Is the game itself is a traditional concept card game that's built with, I guess, an enjoyable gameplay loop, right?
And Star Wars Destiny shines through as the base of this game.
Yes.
It's visible everywhere.
You can see that when they designed this, they went, what worked? When we built this, what did we love and what did the players love? And how can we make that better for them? And it really does. When you play that game, you feel like the team has really just gone, this game is for the people who play it.
Oh, absolutely. And for Star Wars fans,
huge. It's so thematic.
It's very thematic. A lot of the cards that we have, even now as we only have about 50 or so cards released, the level of interplay and thematics between the cards is very cool. A lot of nods to certain things. For instance, we recently got a Palpatine unit.
Yes, and it's unlimited power.
6 health, 6 power.
Yeah.
Or to 66.
It's awesome.
So it's just those little nods that you're gonna, like, as a Star Wars fan, you're going to enjoy.
You're gonna see that card and go, hey, that's my favourite character doing my favourite character's thing.
And it shows that the team cares about Star Wars too.
And they really do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's one thing in Destiny as well that they highlighted, is that they really showed it. But this is its own game, I think. And I think we should start talking. I think let's break it down. Let's break down a turn structure.
Yeah.
So, one really interesting thing about this game is when you think card games, most people tend to think, I have my whole turn, I do everything there, main phases, or just turns.
Not Destiny.
Not Destiny. Not Unlimited.
I'm going to say that a lot. It's going to happen.
The reason is, Destiny did bring this in, and that's why we're discussing the core concept and where you can really feel Destiny is alternating actions.
Probably one of my favourite things that I've had in this game is the returning of alternating actions. And it makes every decision you make so much more impactful, and sequencing of a turn is so much more impactful now than in a lot of card games where, I played this first instead of this cannot really matter that much because it's all your turn. This, playing that first instead of that, can have some major consequences.
To give a breakdown for those who might not fully understand what we're discussing, the turn structure of a Star Wars Unlimited turn is, obviously, you decide who goes first at the beginning of the game, rock, paper, scissors, roll your dice, and you figure that out. You draw your cards and you set up your board by putting down your resources. Then whoever rolled the highest gets the initiative token. You do the first action of a turn. There's a very important distinction, is doing an action. Now an action is anything from playing a card, activating an ability, using an event, attacking. But once you have fully resolved your action, your opponent then gets to make an action. So, for instance, I could start off my turn, I'd play R2-D2. But
and then it would be my turn, and I would play out a TIE Fighter.
And then it'd go back to me. And that's how that core gameplay loop goes. And one really huge thing about that is it's so engaging. I think a lot of people can agree that we've all played games where we've played against an opponent, and it turns kind of into a game of solitaire where you sit down and you watch them play their whole deck, and you're like, man, that's a really cool deck. Can't wait to play mine when you're done.
That's the entire Yu-Gi-Oh meta at the moment.
Oh, a little bit of shade on Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it's the entire Yu-Gi-Oh meta for quite a while.
Oh, but, yeah, absolutely.
Nonetheless, I think it's really engaging, and I think it's really simple to understand. And that's a great place for people who are just learning to come in, and who have played a lot to come from. Right? Because you've got a lot to think about and a lot to consider. And for a new player, it's an easy, digestible, I only have to do one thing right now. Rather than, what am I going to do with all my cards in my hand? What am I going to do with this? What with that?
I think one of the biggest things of it is we've all, like all of us, but a lot of people who've played card games have played Commander at some point.
Yes.
And the
biggest
waiting for 3 other people to have their turn, I have no idea what I was planning, and zoning out is quite common for some people. Obviously, there are people who are really into it and can keep up with that. But
I do love Commander myself. I play it all the time, and I do think that is a common, not nitpick, but I think it is something that newer players can find difficult to get through. And one big thing that helps you get through it is obviously you're playing with 3 friends, so you're just talking the whole time. But there is that point where sometimes, especially in the later game, it can get slower. And that's not just Commander. There are a lot of decks out there for a lot of different card games that do just that. And that's not a dig at the games. Those decks require high level intelligent play, and those games are really good and engaging. But I do think from fresh eyes and from a really fresh perspective, this is great. Because a lot of people, we've been here, we played card games that are just my main phase, do this, but not for nearly a decade have I seen a card game that goes, I do something, now you get to do something. And it's so responsive and snappy, and it really makes you think when someone plays a card. Because when do you play this card? This card's really good. And in any other card game where I could just slap this down and then be on my way, it'd be great. But here, I could play it and something could happen. Someone could activate an ability. Someone could flip their leader into an epic action and warp the whole game with a simple Chewbacca coming on the field. The big 2'9" grip himself.
Yeah, and I think obviously Destiny at certain points in its lifespan had issues with that as well, where there was a lot of action cheating in Destiny. That came especially the kind of first 2 sets with Force Speed and Ray.
Force Speed for the real ones.
Imagine to try to find a force speed.
Oof. Cool. That was fun.
But no, so there's a lot of that kind of action cheating, gain another action kind of stuff. So far in the cards that we've had action efficiency,
Yeah. Yes.
but not straight action cheating.
To give a good example of that, one of my favourite fields so far that I'm really excited about is Green or Command Layer. She's a leader card. Her ability is an action. You can tap her or exhaust her, and you get to attack with a rebel. And then once you've finished that and resolved that attack, you then get to attack with another rebel.
Yes.
So that's action efficiency in that, where it would take, I attack, my opponent does something, I attack, I get to get through that without any interruption in that.
But it's not
Do
attack with
whatever
the
you
unit, gain another action
Yeah,
to do whatever you
Do
want.
whatever you want. It's very specific, and it requires you to have that set up there, which is great. Having action efficiency in a game is really good. And even if they do release additional action cards, I can pretty much safely say that with how we've seen for the design so far, at least I would assume, that there will be a pretty heavy cost with it.
Yes.
If it's going to be something like that.
And one of the things that you're going to run into with this kind of action by action, eventually you run things to do.
Yeah.
When that happens, like Destiny, you do what's called taking the initiative. So this means that you say, cool, my turn's done. I've finished all the actions that I'm going to do. So I'm going to take the initiative and go first on the next turn.
Yeah.
Your opponent then plays out the rest of their actions. Uninterrupted, and then you move on to the next turn of the game.
Just to be clear as well, taking the initiative is an action that only one player can do on each given turn.
Yeah. So if you take the initiative, the other person can't be like, okay, well then now I take the initiative. Once you take the initiative, it's yours, and that action can no longer be taken.
So now that we've discussed a bit about how the turn structure works, let's discuss, I guess, the overall game format. So to begin with, you roll your dice, you determine who starts with the initiative, and then you get your 6 cards, you draw 6 cards, and then you get to pick 2 from your hand, and you get to do something that is really exciting to me. As someone who's played Magic a bunch, this is really exciting.
Dragon Ball?
Yeah. You get to put them down, face down, and that's your resources.
Right.
In this game, you can't get mana flood. You can't get just lands. Everything in your hand can be a land if you want, or can be a resource to use if you want to put it down. Both players do this act simultaneously in the first turn.
I believe it goes in initiative.
Oh, initiative order. Sorry.
So the person with initiative does place their energy first.
And then your opponent goes first. In the first turn, I can't imagine currently it's going to have any effect.
No.
And then you start the game. Obviously, the person who has initiative starts by playing whatever cards in their hand to do their first action, and then vice versa, as we just discussed with the turn order. But it's really exciting to me, and I think this is going to be really good for a lot of players. You don't have to include any cards like lands or specific resource cards, or have to make another separate deck like a Don deck in one piece.
So people that are coming from
Magic.
Pokemon and Magic are gonna find this
To be really
very good, because it's just a freedom that it's not like you don't have a choice to make. You have to choose what cards in your hand are gonna be essentially lost to you for the entire game.
yes.
But you can't not draw energy or not draw land.
I think a lot of people relatable in those specific communities have been at a point where they're like, really want to draw something good here, and you get a land or you get an energy, and you're like, that's my turn. That's done now. Whereas now it can be anything. You can pick up and you also don't have to play an energy every turn either. A resource every turn either.
But if you are a little bit confused here, understandable. We're just kind of talking you through a game, which is very tough to do. On our channel, we will be having gameplay videos.
Yes.
The first one should be up when the podcast goes up.
Yeah.
And we'll be featuring, obviously, me and Rhys are going to be playing using the demo decks that were used at Gen Con.
The Luke and Vader demo decks.
Yes. Obviously, we don't have copies of them. We're going to be print and playing we're going to be talking through each action that we're doing, and it's going to be a really good starting off point. If you're just kind of lost in this conversation at the moment, there'll be a link around here somewhere that I'm going to put, and and then you can go check out an actual gameplay that we're doing that we'll also be talking over, explaining every action. It'll be a lot easier to kind of follow along with if you're not sure how to play.
That first game, I think we're really going to make sure that if you're a newer person or a card game veteran like us, it'll be really succinct, it'll be really easy to understand, and we're going to go through everything for you. Everything.
Absolutely.
Speaking of everything, we have gone through the turns and we've gone through the start of the game. What about what happens when you take the initiative and I pass? What happens then, James?
So, coming from Star Wars Destiny, there was this initiative system as well.
Okay.
Previously, if I passed, so I'm just saying I don't want to take my action, you can take another action, and then Rhys passes, the turn automatically ends. We go on to the next round. So you can kind of, if someone's trying to be like, I have something, I'm pretty sure you're going to play a big bomb, but I have the removal in my hand, you can just say, oh, I just want to go to the next turn, I don't want to...
That is currently still the same in this game, where if both players pass consecutively, the turn ends.
Absolutely. But the difference being, if Rhys here passes, and I take the initiative, so I say I want to go first next turn, the round also ends.
Yes.
Which is something different from Destiny. Previously, he would then get to play out the rest of his turn when I took the initiative. There's no longer the case now. I think it's a good thing.
I think it's great. I think it's a really good way to promote efficient thinking and action economy. The main reason we're mentioning this is because I got caught off on this when we were playtesting. And it's just worth mentioning for those who are listening.
It was just something that I was skimming through the quick start rules, having a look at everything, and went,
that is interesting. It's a really interesting way to do it. Now, James has passed. I passed. What do we do now?
Well, now we go into
Is there cleanup step or the cleanup phase? Or
I can't remember the exact terminology for it, but essentially, everything that you have untaps.
Yep, unexhausts.
You draw 2 cards,
which is really interesting and fun.
And place 1 card from your hand down into your energy
if you'd like to.
Keep that.
In the same initiative order, whoever has initiative does that first. But drawing 2 cards. That's I think a lot of people in card games can agree that you're pretty much drawing 1 at the beginning of your turn. And this as well, for those who are probably hearing and going, hold on a minute, did they say at the end of this turn? Yes, end of your turn is what would most likely be considered the beginning of a lot of other card game turns. You untap, you draw your 2, you put 1 down in your energy, which is optional. To put a card down your resource, fully optional.
And usually when you get to the later parts of the game, after you've kind of played your leader, you do, especially with the current card pool, with not a lot of card draw, you do end up just wanting to keep those 2 cards. I think anyone that's played Dragon Ball, the Dragon Ball Super card game, is going to understand how much card draw base is going to be, because Dragon Ball Super, while you didn't draw 2, you drew 1, and your leader's attack, at least in the early sets, always drew you 1.
Yeah.
So getting that kind of 2 base card draw every turn is going to feel very similar to the kind of base card draw of Dragon Ball, and so people can kind of understand how that's going to...
And for newer players too, who've never played a card game before, once you kind of get the hang of playing this game, you'll probably start to understand the cards more and understand the rules more, and obviously we'll be going through a lot of that. We're going to go through all the aspects and things like that in their own videos, but you'll be able to go, hey, drawing cards is like the best thing ever. Yeah. The best thing. Resource management is huge. Huge. And in any game. Cards in your hand are a resource. As in all card games. They're the biggest resource. I mean, the games are named after them. So it's really good that you get to draw 2, especially in a game where right now we haven't seen a lot of card draw, which I'm sure we will in the future, but the main reason we highlight it is just because it's different. It's a lot of card games are draw 1, and this is draw 2. And it might not seem like a big deal, but once you probably get a few games under your belt, if you played previous card games, you'll probably know what we're talking about. And once you play this game, you'll realize that, man, drawing this extra card is a lot better than if I had only gotten that one.
I think it's going to be huge in a limited format.
Yeah.
Which they've said that they're going to be supporting quite heavily. Drafting sealed events.
I do love a good draft.
Yeah. It's going to be huge in that because I find a lot of times in draft, towards the end of the game, it starts being, well, what can I kind of play out? Because you end up using all your cards because of kind of inefficient deck and all that.
Yeah.
Once you, in those situations, once you stop energizing, you're getting both of those cards into your hand each turn, which is going to make those kind of sealed and draft formats more playable.
Thus more enjoyable.
Absolutely. One of the other things that is very different about Star Wars Unlimited, almost said Destiny then again, but caught myself, is something that I haven't seen a lot of people discussing when they're kind of discussing this card game, and that is the absence of a turn 1.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Yeah, that's a really, really good talking point.
And I know, like, you'll say, well, the first turn is turn 1.
Yeah.
But if you caught on to what Rhys was saying before, on your first turn, you energize 2 cards. You have 2 resources on that first turn.
Which is awesome. In most games where you only get 1, and you get to make a lot of more players.
And it's not like they've not printed any 1 costs.
No, we got R2-D2. He's so good.
He's so good. But there are those 1 drops still that would exist in
any other game.
But you're starting at turn 2, which means I feel like a lot of people coming from Dragon Ball,
Magic,
One Piece, Digimon,
Digimon,
and all that are going to see these 5-6 costed cards and say, oh, those are quite late game cards, but everything is kind of shifted 1 turn
forward.
Over.
It's cool. It's great. And I think one big thing too is when we say first turn, we don't mean just like both players going. I mean first turn as in I go first before you have any resources down, before you have any lands, any energy, anything down. And that's really interesting because in a lot of games, the first turn and the second turn respectively have built decks. There have been decks where you want to go first every time because you need that extra energy. You need those extra resources. You don't care about that turn 1 card draw. You just need to get your stuff out quickly. A lot of ramp decks, some control decks really want to get their resources down early so they can get extra, even that 1 extra like
just
land or energy or anything could be enough to be like, hey, you're only on 1 ahead of you. This is enough for me to cast this card or play this card that'll stop you from doing that game. The absence of that here is really good, and don't worry, control players who love that. The reason that the absence of that is not a downfall is because the game is so responsive.
Yes, absolutely. You control players. Every single time your opponent does anything, you then have an action to respond to it. You can remove it with removal. You can bounce it back to their hand. You can swing into it. You have there's
unlimited options. That's a good one.
It's certainly something.
But James is right. And we've already seen, just in the limited card pool we have, the burgeonings and bloomings of some really good-looking archetypes, really interesting ways to play. You've got your aggro, you've got your control, you've got your attrition resources, and the dual action system, which some people may be skeptical of, and I hope that we've covered it enough for you to to not, worry so much. Now, if you watch our gameplay video, I think you'll see firsthand how good it is that responsing and then playing responsively opens up so much critical thinking, so much options for if you want to play control, or so much non-options if you just want to slam down bodies and go aggro. You can just, you have so much that you can do, and the great thing is if you want to play aggressively and you play all your cards out in one turn, your opponent spends their whole next turn getting rid of everything, it comes back to you. Well, that's really not something you have to worry about too much in this game, because I play one card, my opponent gets rid of it, great. I've still got 3 more to go, and if they take the initiative, I'm just going to get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely found there were definitely decks in Star Wars Destiny that kind of went wide, which caused them to have so many more actions that you can just kind of burn away your opponent's actions by just swinging. They have no more actions, and then suddenly you have all these resources and just can go for it. And I think that's going to be a huge thing in Unlimited as well.
Yeah.
This ability to kind of board presence is not only threats to units and threats to base, it is also a resource of I can swing 1 to your base with R2D2, use his ability, and now I'm looking to you, what are you going to do? If you don't have a board or anything, you have to play something or pass. Those are your 2 options, really, because you're not taking the initiative on the very first turn.
No.
So you're either saying, pass, I need you to do something before I'm ready to do something, in which case, I have a X-Wing, cool, I'll swing into you with that.
And that really highlights how big an action for pass is for all playstyles. Going wide, going tall, going aggro. The pass is great. You don't have to use your resource, and a control player could pass with a kill spell or an open fire in their hand, which is a red aggression card that costs 3 and deals 4 damage to any unit. That's a great card, and you could have that in your hand, and if you know what your opponent's playing well enough, you can go, well, hold on, I know they've just played this, but I know they're going to do this, so I'm best to actually just pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, that's pretty much our coverage over the
general gameplay.
Yeah, general gameplay in terms of the actions. You said a few things there that I think we should unpack. You said base and units.
I did say those things.
Base. We'll start there. James, how do I win a game of Star Wars Unlimited?
So, each player has a base. At the moment, all the bases are...
There are 4.
The same, excluding kind of how they affect deck building, which we'll get to in
we'll get to that in a moment.
But essentially, each base has 30 health.
Yep.
And then you'll have units that you play out. They'll both have an attack value and a health value.
Very similar for players who have played Magic.
It's a very common system in a lot of card games, kind of that health and attack
stuff,
kind of. Essentially, every time you swing into the base, you tap the card, it does its attack damage to the base. Once your base reaches 0 health,
you lose. Currently, there are 4 bases in the game, 1 for each of the core aspects, which again, that's a deck building thing we'll go into in a moment. All bases represent a different location from Star Wars. We've got Cloud City so far, Dagobah Swamp, the command deck of the Death Star, and then the Jeddah. We have Jeddah, from Rogue One.
Absolutely.
Which are the 4. They all have 30 health, which is just once you reach 0, bada bing, bada boom, you're dead. And that's it. So when you build your deck and pick a game, you pick a leader and a base, which we'll go into in a moment. Now, that's kind of how you lose the game. But how does my base get to 0? You mentioned it, units. But there are 2 kinds of units in this game.
This is a huge part of the game, and one of the things that really drew me in this kind of
Huge.
playing units, fighting against each other kind of gameplay.
When I think Star Wars, James, I think clones rushing the battlefield to fight battle droids,
Absolutely.
while in the space above, separatist ships are getting blown apart by Republic vessels. And just as we touched on with the thematics of this game, Star Wars Unlimited really delivers, and they deliver really well in that aspect.
Absolutely. So each player has a ground area and a space area, and there'll be units that are ground units and space units that can be played into these separate areas. Now, the fantastic thing about this is units in the ground area cannot attack units in the space area, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It creates an extremely interesting gameplay kind of style that kind of makes you be like, oh, I'm winning this battle, but if you don't have the space units and they have a space unit that's attacking you every single turn, just slowly chipping away, and you have no answer to that.
That X-Wing is getting in unchecked.
Every single time.
It's pretty good.
And it's something that I think is going to be very interesting when we move forward towards the kind of full set releasing.
Yeah.
And how people kind of work with that. Is someone going to run in with a deck full of spaceships?
Space race!
And say, I'll race your base down.
Yeah.
I think I can get there before you can.
Same with the ground. It can be the same way.
Yeah.
You can do that with either side. And I think that's really a really good, healthy way to promote people building decks. You can be super creative and build only ground troops or space race, or you can take that critical approach and build half-half, or do really whatever you want. It's really interesting, it's really good, and it might sound a little confusing, but trust me when I say the layout's really simple. You get your base and your leader in the middle, and then either side is one of those arenas. Now, just quickly, we did mention that ground units can only attack ground units and your base, and space units can only attack space units and your base. But effects from the ground and space, there are certain effects in the game so far. We've seen a few of them that actually can affect space and ground respectively, which is great. That is great to see.
And a lot of the time, if it is kept to if it's just a general thing, it's a general thing.
Yep.
If not, it'll say. So, for instance, the TIE Interceptor will say deal 3 when played, deal 3 damage to a space unit.
Yes.
Whereas if it just said deal 3 damage to a unit, that could then affect ground units.
I mean, you've got good old 2-cost Leia. She is a awesome yellow card, awesome cunning card. When you play her, she says you can untap a resource or exhaust a unit.
Essentially just tapping a unit.
Yeah. So if you've got a really problematic spacecraft, maybe a capital ship in the space unit, space zone, you can play that Leia and you can get that card exhausted so it can't attack that base, which can buy you some really much needed time. So having those two units, two arenas, is just as we said earlier, is even though this is a traditional card game or it's using bases of a traditional card game, it's still making sure that it just isn't a carbon copy of everything we've got, and it's still making sure that to the core of Star Wars, those space battles, those ground battles, those struggles that we see all of those heroes go through, that's still in the game and it's captured in the game.
And we've played a bunch of test games before, and I can absolutely guarantee you that there have been times when our ground has been at this kind of strange stalemate. Like, we both kind of have units, but none of us are kind of ready to start swinging. But
space is getting through
unchecked, and it'll win you games.
Yeah, and that's also not a negative talking point either.
That's a positive.
Yeah, it's huge. It's great because it means that it promotes thinking about what your plays are, how impactful both of those arenas are, and I think it means people can make the most fun and creative decks in the world. You can build a deck where you go, I don't care what ground units you play. Slap your leader down, get him out there. But it's not going to beat my Relentless. It's not going to beat my all capital ships deck.
My 17 TIE fighters and a capital ship.
That's it.
And my Star Destroyer.
What are the Imperials if not air superiority?
But at the end of the day, it's again something that breeds creativity.
Yeah.
And is going to make the scene all the more different. This game, more than the gameplay, more than anything that I've seen, and any card game that I've played before, piques my deck building brain.
Oh, yes. We are finally here, folks. Deck building. I think we can say, at least I know both of us can safely say that, throughout the decade of card games that we played like competitively, our favourite thing in the world is coming to locals and putting your deck down and someone goes, what's this? And then you go, I'll show you.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And
it's
you put out your spiciest deck list that
the
you can
spiciest!
And then they sit there and they're like, well, I didn't know that these were cards in the game, and I might have lost or I might have won, but I had probably the most fun playing.
And the reason why is the aspect system that they've gone with. We've spoken a little bit about how the aspects work and kind of mentioned an aspect here and there. Cunning, vigilance, aggression. But essentially it's split up into 6 different aspects.
Yes.
There are 2 major aspects.
Hero and
villain. And then 4 kind of minor aspects. This is not what they're officially called, but it's kind of how they've been portrayed and how I kind of see them as kind of like 2 big banners and then 4 little smaller subgroups.
So, the current aspects overall are vigilance, which is blue, command, which is green, aggression, red, cunning, yellow, and then hero, which is like a goldy white, and then villain, which is your black there. These are the 4 main aspects of the vigilance, cunning, command, and aggression. Those are your I guess, considered colours. That's what you build your deck around. You know, when you're building a magic deck, you build your red, blue, is it whatever. When you're building a Dragon Ball deck, you build your green, red decks. That's kind of what that is. But hero and villain are nearly omnipresent. Star Wars as a whole is about that struggle of light versus dark. I mean, we see it in every movie. We see it in the series. We see it in the books and our games. It's all about that. And that's really well, again, portrayed on the cards where, you know, when you build a deck, you can build a really creative or hero deck or villain deck and really explore your favourite characters in that way. Now, when building a deck, where should I start?
We're going to start with your leader and your base. These are the 2 things that I'm going to let you in on what aspects you can freely add to your deck. So, for instance, if I were to take the Luke leader and the Dagobah Swamp, I probably would, these are both blue things. More likely, I would take the
Cloud City Terminal, which is the cunning base currently.
Yellow one, which would mean, essentially I'm saying my deck is blue and yellow.
Blue,
cunning, and vigilance.
And there's one other thing on the Luke Skywalker leader.
And hero.
Yes, of course.
So leaders have 2 aspects to them.
From what we've seen so far, they have 2 aspects.
So far?
Yeah.
I believe they've confirmed that all leaders, at least in this first set,
in this first set, they've pretty much said that
dual aspects.
we're all getting the dual aspects. And if you go and watch the FFG streams, I think this is we may even be downplaying a bit, but the hero and villain thing is like almost the core of deck building in this game.
And the bases each have 1 aspect on them, and you can choose any base to add. Cunning, vigilance, aggression, command.
There is no hero or villain base. Those aspects are dedicated to the characters because I guess you can't really have a place in Star Wars that is a heroic place or a villainous place. There are places that are definitely, light side and dark side, but the acts that the characters do really solidify if they're a hero or a villain. And that's what the game is meant to unfold and show you. So James, now that I've picked my base, my blue Luke Skywalker and my yellow Cloud City, what's next?
Well, then you're building a 50 card deck. Now, obviously, you can include hero cards, you can include blue cards, you can include yellow cards. But the really interesting thing about deck building is you are not limited to that. I know that sounds weird to people who
just explained the whole villain thing.
If you're running Luke Skywalker, you can throw in a Force choke.
You could.
But for each aspect on a card, and each card has their own aspects that they could be just villain, they could be aggression and villain, they could be command and villain, they could be vigilance and hero. Each aspect that is you do not have on either your leader or your base will make that card cost 2 extra resources.
One thing to note as well was each aspect, like each per aspect. So, for instance, we should probably deconstruct card anatomy quickly here. A usual card, for instance, a unit has a cost, its resource cost, which is how many resources you're going to tap to play it. It's got its attack and health, obviously how much it deals, how much it has before it dies. Damage is cumulative in this game as well. So if a base takes damage, it stays. If a unit takes damage, it just takes that one's damage. So if I've got a 2-3 and it's taken 2 damage, it's got 1 health left before it dies. But let's say we'll use 2 cards as examples here: Force Choke and Vigilance, which has just been recently spoiled.
Absolutely.
Force Choke is aggression villain for 2 resources. If I'm playing it in my yellow blue Luke hero deck, Force Choke is going to cost 2 extra for aggression, 2 extra for villain, because I don't have those aspects that can match up. I've got 1 yellow, 1 blue, and 1 hero. If I was running a aggression Luke deck, it would cost 4, because I've got an aggression symbol, so that matches up, but I don't have a villain symbol, so it costs 2 extra.
Yeah. Whereas with Vigilance is a double blue card.
Yeah, really interesting.
Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I've got blue, so I should be good.
Yep.
But there's a reason why I said before, I'm going to take Luke and Dagobah Swamp.
Yep, that's your double blue Luke.
If you only have one of a symbol, you can only have, for free,
that symbol
one of those symbols.
Yeah, so that symbol gets counted as one off that one that's checked off. So when you go to play a card, you check its aspects, and you check how many of those aspects you control on a leader and base card. If I've got Luke and Dagobah Swamp, my Vigilance, which costs 4 blue, or 4 resources and is double blue, I can pay my 4 and play that without having to worry. If I'm playing that in blue-yellow Luke, Vigilance is going to cost me 6, because I see that blue symbol, and I match that up with Luke Skywalker. He's a good guy, he's a Vigilance. But then I've got my other blue symbol, which doesn't match. I don't have a Dagobah Swamp, I've got a Cloud City. So that's going to cost me that extra 2, making it 6. So that might catch people off in the beginning, which is why it's worth mentioning. But for those who are kind of wondering about why this is a big talking point, is it makes really interesting deck building.
Absolutely. I am an absolute fiend for throwing in random cards that my opponent isn't going to expect, and for them to sit there and say,
"What does
you
this
have
do?"
access to every single card in the game if you want to pay a little bit extra for it, is music to my ears.
It's a great way to do it.
The element of surprise should never be understated in a card game.
Oh, it is huge to play cards that people don't know and have it come out of nowhere and go, that's not what I was expecting. Because then, as soon as someone wasn't expecting a card, that's an upper hand. That's an advantage for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very common in those high-level competitive scenes to know what's meta, know what people are playing generally, and so to be able to switch that up on players that are counting on a very specific list of cards in your deck is, especially if you can do it early on in the game, it sets a precedent for the rest of the game that just kind of says, you don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And really, you need to be a little bit more scared than you were before.
It's much like sideboarding in any competitive card game, right? But I think one great thing about this game is it removes the need for things like specified land or energy costs. So whereas if you're building a sideboard for Magic, your deck's red-blue, but you want to include some black cards in there, you then have to sideboard black lands in to be able to put that in. In this game, you don't need to do that. You can build your deck with as many cards as you want, no matter how bad other people might think they are and how great you think they are, and you can really just build a deck that's your own. You want to play your favorite character? Do it. If there's a Luke Skywalker that comes out and he's not in the colors that you want to play him in, but you really want this card, do it.
Play it.
No one's going to stop you. Play your card the way you want to play it and build your deck the way you want to build that deck. And that, I think, is it's music to my ears as a Star Wars fan and as a card game fan to be able to build a deck I want with the characters I want with realistically no real limitation.
No. And that just kind of... It's called Unlimited, and when they came up with the name, they came up with it for a reason.
Yeah.
And as much of it's a joke to be like, you have unlimited options.
You really do.
They've really kind of let loose on, especially on the deck building aspect of it.
It's so good.
Every single hero or villain that you play down can have 4 different extra aspects as base.
Yeah.
That will completely change how that deck plays and how that deck is built, and that's going to be huge.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and I think it's just really good to see, and I think that's why we're so excited about this game, because it is thematic. It's got a solid base. It's not gimmicky, but it's fresh. Its deck building is unique and creative. The gameplay is engaging and fast and just makes you think. And the characters are thematic and accurate, and it just, when I sit down and I put Luke Skywalker down and he gives a shield to a unit, I see him walking in front of them with his lightsaber out, blocking a blaster.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, man. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We are very excited about this game. We want to bring that excitement to you guys. I know this first episode has been quite a lot of rules-heavy talk, and I promise that's not, like...
Fear not.
It's not. We're not going to spend every single episode talking to you about how an action works, but we thought we'd get this first episode as kind of a baseline. Hey... This is kind of the game. This is why we're excited about it. This is why we want to share it with you. And if you are still confused, please check out that gameplay video.
Yeah, we're gonna go. It's really in depth. We've really put a lot of effort into it. Made sure to explain things for you guys. So, and I know, like myself, I'm a big visual learner. So just watching people play it can help out a lot. So. While this one's been a lot really rules heavy, expect a lot of we're going to go through the spoilers and we're going to go through the starter decks because that stream is coming out soon. At the time of this video release, it's coming out in a week or so, and expect a lot of card reviews, theory crafting, a lot of spice on that deck building there. Oh yeah, spicy boys. So
you're going to see some dumb ideas come from us. Let's get that completely out there.
The stupidest.
We're going to say, this card is going in this deck and it's going to be great. And then you're going to go, oh, that's actually really interesting. That could work. And you're going to go check out a gameplay video that we've put out and you're going to watch it crash and burn.
Horribly.
Terribly.
And then, we'll learn from that mistake.
We might.
Nah. But I guess that's what you can expect from us. Is we'll make sure to be putting out content for you guys. We'll be looking at the cards, looking at the gameplay, updating you on how everything goes, and really, we want you to come on this journey with us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really exciting. And I think you guys should be excited for it too. So I think this one's been a long one. We might leave it here. But come back next week and we'll have a big old chat with you about the new starter decks, which is going to be super exciting.
Oh, it's going to be good.
Super exciting.
It's going to be very good.
And make sure you go and watch that gameplay video if you're curious. If you know how to play, check it out anyway. We're fun.
And obviously, if you know how to play, it might be a little bit boring for you. We're going to have a gameplay video that kind of goes along with each of the
deck lists.
Our next episode is probably going to be on those starter decks, and we're going to be printing off and playing those starter decks as
full ratios, everything that they reveal, and that with the new cards that they'll reveal.
Obviously, if they don't reveal all the ratios, we'll just kind of take a guess at it, but we'll go as close as we can to what's been revealed.
And then moving forward from there, you can expect a lot of content from us in terms of deck building, how the game plays, what the meta's looking like, what we think of cards, what we want to see, theory crafting, and you know what? Comment and message us and let us know what you want to see as well, because we love this game just as much as you love this game.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk about it. And if you want to see us talk about something, let us know.
If you have a spicy take, if you have a spicy idea that you think this is going to be it, this is going to be the meta, let us know and we can talk about it. We can try it out in our gameplay videos for you, absolutely. And
in the future of the game, if you want to see two idiots try Aggression Kanan, or some random combination come out, do it. Ask us. We'll do it. We will build it to the best of our ability.
To the best.
Put that fine spice touch on it.
Alright, well, thank you guys very much for watching.
Yes.
I really hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and I really hope you're going to be coming back next week to watch us check out those starter decks and hear our thoughts on those.
We will see you next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and comment if you want to see anything. Other than that, have a good one, guys.
Goodbye.